Chaos reigns supreme. Magic has endless potential, and there are those who spend lifetimes mastering its many secrets in order to control it. I am not interested in that. I'd rather magic stay spontaneous, dangerous, and in a way where you don't know if it will help or hinder you. Just like my ex. So for my first full run of Baldur's Gate 3, my team must be only Wild Magic Sorcerers in order to maximize the chaotic side of magic, as you never know when an action will cause a surge of wild magic, leading to a random effect. On the advice of a much more knowledgeable friend, I'll be playing this run on balanced difficulty, so I'm not lost in this world till the sun goes out, as I've only played a bit of the game before and this will be my first full playthrough. I will also be splitting my journey into 3 videos, each covering one of the 3 acts. I think you can guess which one this one is. The rules are straightforward: be Wild Magic Sorcerers, no other class allowed, and beat the game. That does apply only to the party characters, not to any summonable or usable ally. Now let's go see whether the fickle nature of magic will be more my ally or more my foe. In who knows how long ago, in a land who knows how far away, a young gnome finds himself waking aboard a Mind Flayer ship that's currently aflame. He's rather sure this isn't where he fell asleep, but who can say for certain in the life of an adventurer? Regardless, best to skedaddle before they start charging rent. Unfortunately, only a short distance away, he's waylaid by Lae'zel, a Githyanki fighter. She says something about confusing our hero for a thrall of the Mind Flayers and that they must fight their way through the imps that are attacking the ship. But all the gnome hears is that she's not there to charge him rent, and that's all that matters to him. Lae'zel, not being a sorcerer, takes refuge when the imps attack, and our hero must valiantly fight alone. After accidentally murdering some other prisoners, he notes to not press that button again, and balances the scale by saving Shadowheart from her pod. Keeping the cleric and the fighter still and useless, the sorcerer rushes through the demonic forces, and while our story is nearly cut as short as the gnome himself is, he does make it to the ship's control console and blind lucks himself into crashing the ship and falling to his certain death. Fate has big plans for our small hero though, and once more, Baldur's Gate 3, as he is known, finds himself waking up somewhere new, but certainly an improvement over his last snooze spot, he must admit. Seeing Shadowheart sleeping oh so peacefully, Baldur's Gate 3 shakes her violently awake and sends her to camp before heading straight into a few walking brains. While the gnome reflects on how everyone is sort of walking brains, and that doesn't make these creatures any different or special, he fails to defend himself adequately and falls to their claws. That can't be right. Fate did not go through this much trouble to keep him alive just for him to die here. Even though a second loss would like to disagree with that assessment, there will not be a third, as the wily gnome realizes jumping up and down will keep the not so bright brains from being able to reach him. It does worry the narrator though, that our hero is struggling so much already, but one must have faith that fate chose right. Or I'll be out of a job, and perhaps as important, the land of Faerun will fall into ruin. Moving on, BG3 the gnome finds himself unsure if wrestling with the attractive elf rogue Astarion to keep from being stabbed still counts as cuddling, before going on to pull Gale, the wizard, out of a wall. While he should have been focused on how he can use these new allies, the gnome's mind was more preoccupied with the question of why are there so many attractive people out here in predicaments, and perhaps it's best not to question it when they all seek to join his camp. The next few people he stumbles upon, though, are neither attractive, well, maybe in a certain light he supposed, nor friendly, but nothing a little lying can't fix, convincing them to flee the area. Then, using the power of racism, as the door guard can't tell the difference in gnome voices, BG3 is able to catch the guard off guard and slay him before he can get help. But it doesn't change that a group of bandits still stand between the gnome and his goal. Perhaps a little creative destruction can solve that. It did not. Returning after a long rest, he ambushes them again, and by making use of hit and runs and the bandits' tragically short attention span, BG3 is able to eliminate most of them, but not all before he falls himself. Turning back time, the gnome tries the same tactic once more, and this narrator's not surprised at all when it yields the same results. Are we sure there wasn't a mix-up and our actual hero isn't stuck helping the Smurfs or something? At least he has the sense to turn away and seek danger elsewhere, freeing Lae'zel before coming across a group of goblins attacking a group of, well, not goblins. Baldur's Gate 3 asked himself sensibly if he should get involved in more violence without understanding the root of their differences. No, wait, he just started wasting goblins left and right. I should have seen that coming. What I could not have seen coming is while the fighting goes overall smoothly with the aid of the defending force, Will, a warlock with more flair than sense it seems, is killed when he leaves himself open to an opportunity attack from the goblin's feral warg. I am fairly certain that guy is important, and yet the mere presence of our hero's rotten luck and already he has fallen. After not very nobly looting everyone first, including Will himself, Baldur's Gate 3 uses a revive scroll to return the warlock to life, triggering a wild surge that covers the area in spikes. If Will wasn't stuck just standing there, he most certainly would have died yet again had he taken another step. The gnome couldn't help but think, it wouldn't be a great loss after watching the warlock's less than stellar performance, but I, for one, do not think he should be one to think such thoughts after all we've seen of his failures already. Entering into the sanctuary of this grove, it is discovered that there are many tiefling refugees here, about to be ousted by the druids that call this area home, as the druids fear goblin invasion. Instead of prioritizing using his magical gifts to aid the poor tieflings, the gnome uses those gifts to disguise himself repeatedly in order to get as many free meals as possible at the communal soup pot. A real paragon of heroism we are not getting, I see. Perhaps I judged him too harshly though, as but moments later he saves an imprisoned goblin from execution, and then a minute after that, saves a little girl from being executed by the druids for attempted thievery. Okay, that last thing isn't so noble as it's the bare minimum to keep a small child from being killed, so I'm not going to give the gnome more credit than he deserves. Returning to the crypt protected by those hardy bandits, BG3 finds a side entrance, and while he avoids the bandits, he's not lucky enough to avoid the undead. They're not aware of his presence at least, and he's able to ambush their ambush, but that doesn't save him when he's bombarded by silence circles that keep him from using his spells. Trying again, this time the gnome flees further into the crypt, forcing the undead to chase him and enter into their own silence circle. Suddenly, instead of fighting an overly ambitious gnome, the undead find themselves facing off with a dog as BG3's wild magic surges. Biting one, the other undead struggle without their magic, and one by one are beaten down by the magic of a hard conk in the face. Also, BG3 can make the friendship of Withers, a powerful being who has the ability to change any party member's class. Which means at last, the gnome will no longer be alone in his bad decisions as he returns to camp and has each of his companions give up their lifelong passions and become what he needs them to be: chaotic magic menaces to society. Or just plain menaces to themselves, as they either get caught in easily avoidable traps or end up burning each other while fighting the nearby bandits. Gale has been combat fit for less than 5 minutes, and already he's been killed while attempting to disarm a trap. All BG3 can think is it's a good thing all these new friends come with a couple revive scrolls each, and boy did he wish he had some of these for his last set of friends. May they rest in peace. The group discovers Will has finally recovered from his premature death, and they quickly scoop him up, as BG3 knows you can never have enough friends as his amount of enemies surely will not stop growing. I do not know how much aid a dog will be at halting the end of the world, but I'd really still rather have one by my side and perish than be without. Even better, the gnome thinks, is an incredibly hot tiefling woman to set his heart aflame, and likely the entire surrounding forest too if they're not careful. Karlach the barbarian, quickly transformed into a sorcerer, is being hunted by false paladins who work for the archdevil Zariel, Karlach's old slave master. If there's one thing Baldur's Gate 3 believes, is that whatever a gorgeous, large, muscular woman wants, she is going to get, or he will happily perish trying. In a rare moment of thinking ahead, the party splits apart in order to ambush the hunters, and within a couple minutes, the would-be Karlach killers lie dead. BG3 does nearly join them after the group flees outside to avoid Karlach's fiery victory rage, and she ends up following them, running right through and setting her new friend aflame. It wouldn't be his kind of woman if she didn't accidentally kill him once or twice, after all. The false paladins were simple, so of course, a short distance away, being ambushed by gnolls and hyenas must be the opposite of that, and the whole team is slain in moments. Make sure the gnolls can't go for backup though on the second try, and victory is much easier to achieve. In another rare moment of intelligence, upon spotting a larger, more dangerous looking group of gnolls, our heroes decide to turn away and avoid such unnecessary risk. Sadly, that was their quota of intelligent thinking for the week, and while exploring nearby, they find themselves walking into the same cave that the gnolls were actively attacking. Discovering a group of travelers being attacked, the gnome asks them to hold off the gnolls for just a moment, while he prepares to join them in battle. And much like I suspect BG3's father did to BG3 himself, he then vanishes from their lives. Taking a long rest before portaling back into the cave, it is of little surprise to find the group that needed assistance now dead, and their gnoll killers surrounding our foolish adventurers. In a world of limitless options and possibilities, the most astounding thing is how many times this one gnome can find the stupidest option of all to take. For how badly the odds are against them, our heroes actually do put up a pretty strong fight and refuse to go down alone, but it is never enough to best the gnoll warlord. Doesn't help when BG3's wild surge causes him to switch place with the enemy, landing himself right in Astarion's cloud of daggers. Bad luck is the norm, and with how bad of a spot they've landed themselves in, they're going to need all the luck they can to escape. After 5 grisly deaths, luck proves itself fickle when the entire group is dead last in the turn order, leading Gale to fall before getting to do anything. But still, the heroes overcome the odds with Cloud of Daggers taking the enemies out in clumps, and quicken spells to attack twice on their turn. And while the gnome may not like it, it does help that every time he gets beaten down, Astarion just picks him back up, so the gnoll warlord would keep taking his fury out on the small sorcerer, providing the rest of the team time to kill the leader and be free of this cycle. But not free of the cave, as exploring causes BG3 and Gale to be trapped when they jump to one side of the cave, but lack the strength to jump back, which I feel is a pretty clear example of their messed up approach to every problem. It takes 10 minutes before our hero finally realizes he can just use the map to teleport out of his situation, and it is just sad to watch the whole thing unfold. When they come across mercenaries underground that are looking for their shipment back unopened, it turns out that shipment was the one the gnolls were attacking. And yes, of course, our inquisitive little hero had opened it. This enrages the mercenaries, and once again, the heroes must slaughter everyone if they wish to live. I do not know which side it helped more when a wild surge turns everyone into dogs and cats, not just once, but twice. But I do know that while the heroes prevail, Astarion went down to a cat scratch, so I'm sure he's not too pleased with things and really needs a magical tetanus shot. Back at camp, Will gets a makeover courtesy of his displeased devil dealer, and suddenly BG3 finds him much more relatable. The other devil out here, Raphael, tries to get BG3 to sell his soul for a cure to his condition, which yes, he does have a tadpole in his head that may transform him into an evil mind flayer at any moment. But as someone who may spontaneously combust whenever he uses any magic, worrying about such things isn't the gnome's way. And what he won't tell the devil is that he sold his soul long ago in a bargain with some rats for some cheese at 3 AM. The one deal he never regrets making. He also discovers his new friend Astarion, the elf that looks just like a vampire, is exactly that, a vampire. What a shock to absolutely no one. But what kind of friend would he be if he didn't let his new pal suck his blood? Not a very good one, that's for sure. While sidetracked from saving themselves from death by Mind Flayer transformation, the group comes across an old woman being harassed by 2 men looking for their sister. Naturally, with no understanding of what is happening, our hero prepares to attack the old lady in his fear of having his cheeks pinched, and it turns out, for once, he is right to be so hyper-violent as she magically vanishes. After Karlach gets her butt handed to her by a random angry frog, the group pays a visit to the crone's home. Heading deep into her lair, it's not hard to deal with her brainwashed guards and bypass her gas traps with the power of books. Not the knowledge within them, gods no, but to block the gas. As someone who loves books, even I must admit that is one of the most practical usages of books that I have ever witnessed. All to come across the hag herself, Auntie Ethel, at the bottom. She's literally known as a hag. That's not an insult, though I suppose, given her personality, I do mean it as an insult as well. She seeks to sacrifice her victim rather than let her be rescued, and so it's both a fight and a race against time. Not much worry though when her main tactic is to use illusions that can be easily countered with magic missiles that do not miss their targets. Then when the hag slips on ice, they keep her away from her life alert so she can't get back up, and finish her while she's down. Gotta make sure she can't get back up in case she tries the old slip and sue tactic, BG3 thought. And look, the victim's alive, and they returned her dead husband to her. Maybe not in the freshest condition, but plenty of people have no one, so the gnome supposed an undead love is better than no love at all. Unless you have a sense of smell, but that's the victim's trouble. After almost getting wiped out killing a vampire hunter, wiping out a few shadow druids, nearly being eaten by an owlbear, shoving his hand into Gale's purple glowing chest as friends do, accidentally sending a gnome flying from a windmill to his death, experiencing a vision of the ghost of Christmas future, finally reading a book for once, accidentally turning both into sheep multiple times, and also getting stuck in a large bubble while fighting a giant spider. After all that and more, does our group of easily distracted adventurers finally reach the goblin camp. The goblins are friendly to the gnome, though I'm sure the drow disguise helps, and would probably have stayed non-hostile if BG3 hadn't spotted a captive young owlbear in their camp. There likely was a way to free the cub without slaughtering the entire camp, but that seems to take too much thinking and not enough magic missile shooting for the adventurers to even consider. Now the team has a cute little owlbear cub, which even I must admit is worth any amount of massacres to obtain. None of the goblins within the base hear all that ruckus, and therefore remain friendly, which would make it incredibly easy to ambush them all, which they do in order to save Halsin, the lead druid of the grove, but fail to do so when dealing with the goblin's top priestess. In fact, the gnome decides to have his party leave the room so he can drink an unknown substance offered by the sketchy doctor, and of course, immediately passes out without aid. He wakes up imprisoned and is only saved from death when a dwarf working for the demon Raphael portals in and murders the priestess on BG3's behalf. I don't care what the gnome says, there is no way he planned any of that. He just has all the luck of Faerun on his side to counterbalance his brain-rotting choices. Excuse me, sorry, that's inaccurate. It's not brain-rotting, more like a brain actively being eaten as he chooses to put more of those tadpoles in his head while he's still recovering from his last stupid decision. By the gods, clearly we have overestimated the goblin threat, because their entire base is wiped out without breaking a sweat by a gnome with a worm-infested brain who relies on wild magic that constantly works against him, who just woke up from being drugged unconscious, and whose motto is clearly, "Don't worry about thinking, luck will save me from my bad decisions." Case in point, BG3 takes a short break from killing this nest of goblins in order to get impromptu brain surgery from a woefully underqualified bard that results in him losing an eye and needing a replacement one. A surgery he took on in the first place to remove the tadpole in his head, ignoring the fact that he just willingly put multiple new tadpoles in that same head mere minutes before. And then he pops back into the goblin base and easily slaughters all of them like he didn't just have the world's worst brain surgery. I don't get it, I just don't get it. And I need to lie down before the stress of watching this cursed gnome gives me a fourth heart attack. With the power of magic missiles, cloud of daggers, lots of ambushing, and way too much luck in his favor, the goblin leadership is decimated, Halsin the druid leader is free, and the tiefling refugees are safe to travel on towards Baldur's Gate, the city, not the gnome. A brief moment of revelry gives me the final bit of proof I need to know that everyone in this party has a brain-eating worm in their head as they all actively flirt with the gnome, and somehow he wins the affection of the gorgeous and powerful Karlach. It is very confusing, but I guess huzzah for them. Continuing their search for a cure, the party makes their way into the Underdark, nearly dying to giant beasts, a bunch of turrets, and an ambush by dwarf slavers. If not for hoarding a supply of healing potions, these adventurers likely would have perished often down here in the dark. But when they return to the light to explore, that is where they find death. Well, after a nice little bit of band practice, that is. Cats that are allergic to magic, the most unexpected yet perfect obstacle to this magical team. Every spell against the cats backfire, causing the cats to multiply or turn into panthers, and with no means to fight them without magic, the party is quickly defeated. What kind of incredibly cool allergies are these? My allergies only cause me to sneeze a bunch, not turn into a giant cat. Some creatures have all the luck. But luck will only get them so far when the party tries again, this time using overwhelming firepower and quicken spells to wipe out the felines before their allergies can activate. The threat of death does not end there, as the Githyanki warriors that call this monastery home attempt to kill the group for their crazed evil god queen. Either that, or because BG3 decided it would be fun to deface their paintings. Both seem like reason enough. While death does claim the party once in the monastery, its cold grip fails to find purchase ever so barely time and again, despite how close it does come. There are many hard-hitting Githyanki warriors, but what they fail to understand is that these sorcerers specialize in area of effect or multiple target attacks, so the tactic of clumping together always backfires, allowing our heroes to triumph. It is the same reason the heroes best a large group of undead that ambush them on the open road, and it is that reason the team has no problem sinking a group of slavers in a ship-to-ship battle. Well, that, and because BG3 pushed their leader into the water before the fight even started, but still. Continuing into the dark involves getting skewered by a couple of tough slavers, some more random impromptu band practice, near death by mimics, watching Astarian struggle on how to read a book, and then saving some slaves in their slave master from a cave-in, only to immediately turn on said slave master because, well, the heroes are idiots, but they're still heroes. BG3 is a dead hero in this case, but the power of friendship in so many magic missiles prevails over the slavers, and it isn't long before the gnome is breathing once more. Drat. With the slavers dead and the slaves free, our hero gets the ugliest makeover he possibly can, fights some random living armor because, sure, why not, and then uses all his magical powers to give himself the longest beard possible because, as he puts it, all the best magic users have long beards, so therefore, he too will be truly unstoppable if he grows his beard out. The fact that he died to lava moments later somehow didn't show him the flaw in his logic, nor did the death by giant metal construct. But do not worry, BG3 did not die alone, as once Gale realizes it's a losing battle, he chooses to activate the magical nuke that is stored in his body and decimate absolutely everything. Did it accomplish anything, or save the team? Nope, quite the opposite. But it made sure they didn't go alone, and I guess there's value in that kind of spite. Trying again and resisting the instinct to nuke themselves, the giant construct is actually quite simple to beat when the team makes use of the massive hammer in this forge. With victory over the forge complete, all things in Act 1 that can be done have been done, and our chaotic heroes make their way to the Shadowlands, bringing an end to Act 1. Huzzah! After 32 hours, 17 minutes, Act 1 out of 3 has been beaten with only Wild Magic Sorcerers. They're not the brightest group of heroes, nor the luckiest, especially that gnome, and the chaos magic rarely works in their favor, but they made it this far. I thank you all for listening, and I do hope to see you in Act 2, as the heroes bring their particular brand of chaos into the Shadowlands. May the tides of chaos favor you always, friends. Godspeed for now, friends.